Greetings, tubers. MZ here with you for another edition of Who's a Savage Now. Who's a Savage Now? Jimmy Dore is a savage now, and Greg Palast. These are two savages, two new savages. Okay, now here's Jimmy on his show a little while ago with again Greg Palast. This is back in March, April. When he had him on his YouTube show. There's the movie that he's, the best democracy money can buy, that he's plugging at every opportunity, okay? This movie came out in 2016, I believe, right? So that was 3 years ago. But this is a updated version, right? Okay, whatever that means. And this book by the same name came out like 20 years ago. Almost 20 years ago, 2003 or 2004 or something. Okay, I'll have to look that up. But here's Greg again. I grew up with the Vegas shooter, Greg Palast, okay? And just in the comments, nobody's buying it. Over half of the comments are like, this guy is not telling the truth because he's just telling the government line about the Vegas shooting. It was a lone shooter, lone gunman. Jimmy's eating it up. This is where Greg is totally see-through, okay? Just he can't be telling the truth, and it's weird because he gets the guy's name wrong. Like I caught him misidentifying John Bolton as the National Security Agency, working at the National Security Agency, and when he's the National Security Advisor, Greg got those two mixed up. He said that John Bolton was the head of the NSA, but he's the National Security Advisor. He works at the White House, not at the NSA, okay? So here's another example of Greg getting the name wrong. He calls him Pollock, not Stephen Paddock. Now this is concerning the Vegas shooting.
Who made this movie called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and it's got a re-release, an updated version is out this week. It's Greg Palast is here. Hi, Greg.
Hey, how you doing, Jimmy? If we have a moment, I'd like to get into why I did this. It's in the film.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay? And I get frustrated. If you think I don't, people say, how do you not get frustrated? What do you say?
So he's going to talk about a point in his movie. It's just the whole, this guy's whole, it's just all made up. No facts, very little details and facts, just all, stories, made up stories. He's going to tell a story about how he gets fed up and he wanted to quit. And then some actress comes through the TV screen and pulls him out and they go visit his hometown. It's like, what?
I get terribly frustrated and I want to quit. And in the film, because it's following me,
that's a movie bit, dude. That's a bit that you did for the movie, but he's passing it off as like, as like reality.
I actually do quit. I said, I'm not doing this. I don't care, Rolling Stone, whatever. It's not going to be in the New York Times. It's not going to be on your NBC News. So it's not, who's going to listen? I got to put this on in The Guardian in Britain, right? So I give up. And then in the film, because it's in my mind, I'm at Joe's Papaya in New York and feeling sorry for myself over a cup of coffee, and I'm watching Shailene Woodley in the Divergent films, And so she just grabs me, pulls me through the screen, and tells me it's time to go home. And you know what home for me is? Home.
So he's like starting out with trying to get us to believe that he gets frustrated and feels like quitting sometimes, and then talks about like some actress showing up and pulling him through the TV screen. Like that wasn't a made up bit for the movie. So he tries to combine fact with fantasy. Here, he's a fantasy guy. He's not a news guy. He never studied journalism. He studied business. Okay? He even goes on to say Goldman Sachs offered him a job. All right? But he doesn't explain how he says he grew up with Stephen Paddock, and he calls him Stephen Pollock. But then he never gives us any details about he got out of there and made it to the Ivy League school. He never tells us how. He just says he kicked in some doors. So he never gives us any details. He just glosses over everything. And those are red flags for journalists. And what other the greatest investigative journalist of our time, according to The Guardian, right? What other greatest investigative journalist of our time never mentions an interview that he's done with anybody? All he does is talk to people. He knows people. He knew Hugo Chavez. He knew Guido. He knew Maduro. He knows all of them, and he talk to them. But he never interviewed. Now he never mentions interviewing one of them. So that's odd. That's just a red flag for a journalist. Journalists mention interview every other freaking sentence because they go out and interview people. Not Greg. Not the greatest investigative journalist of our time, never mentions the word interview once. I dare anyone to find me a passage where he mentions interviewing anyone.
Home for me is a place called Sun Valley, California, and a place called San Fernando Road. And she takes me there, and we walk down that road.
Okay, that's great, Jim. That's great, Greg. But look at the comments. Look at the comments. The comments are really, really telling. The comments are really, really telling. I live 1 block from San Fernando Road. The railroad tracks are not abandoned. It's part of the Metrolink light rail, and they're used constantly. I hear the trains every day from my house. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Video machines. I have loved Greg's work for 20. Here it is. I have loved Greg's work for 20 years, but this interview is bizarre as hell. Okay. Okay. I didn't really know him, but I remember all about his hidden talents and aspirations as a kid and how he spent every day of his life in adulthood. Yeah, sure. Okay. So right off the bat, people are just not buying Greg's shit. Some people seem skeptical of his claim that he went to school with Paddock. If you look it up, both Greg and went to the school. So yeah, he's telling the truth. Okay, so one guy believes him. So thank you, Greg and Jimmy, for this story. Okay. Damn, Jimmy, I feel like you could have asked some better follow-up questions than you did. This is your dude. You all should be on the same frequency. Weak, Jimbo. Absolutely. Jimmy's not. Neither of these guys studied journalism. Neither one of them. Okay, so take it easy on them when you're criticizing their journalism skills. I too got shafted by the education system, but have zero plans to commit atrocities. Lots of people grow up in marginal situations. Not everyone goes out and kills 58 wounds over 400. We get it. You knew the guy. Next. Steve Pollock was a great buddy of mine. Doesn't even know. Dear Greg, attending Harvard doesn't cure psychosis. Just add Ted Kaczynski. Don't blame the Polytechnic High School you went to. Greg's all of a sudden a psychologist. He's going to tell us, get into the mind of the Vegas shooter. Wow. Revealing, but you'll never hear or see this in major media. Greg Palast is the greatest investigative journalist of our time. That was probably one of Greg's employees. True, we have a class war. Jimmy, please keep it coming. Bringing on GP. Best shows yet. Okay, no take on the multiple shooter bombshell, Jimmy? Nope, just the old, at 155, Palast said he went to school with Steve Pollock. The Vegas shooter is Steve Paddock. So I'm supposed to believe a guy he says he knew from second grade to high school graduation and can't get his name correct? Yeah, okay. Support Greg Palast. He's a true independent journalist. Yeah, The accurate title should be the most money democracy can see. Now Greg is making it sound like he knows Steve Paddock motives better than law enforcement authorities. He sure seems to like professing his assumptions as fact. There you go. It's all about assumptions. Speculation news. Greg Palast is a speculative news guy. The theories presented were plausible, but I'm still not ready to draw conclusions. Jimmy Dore show is sold out in Portland. I wanted to see Jimmy spit on Alex Jones. Yeah, Jimmy could have been arrested for that. Alex could have pressed charges. This guy is not accurate. The shooter was a professional video poker player, not a recreational gambler. Greg Palast is a stand-up guy. I think a Pulitzer Prize winner. Great journalist who often has only been able to release his stories in the UK. Yeah, that's his meal ticket. Worked for The Guardian, BBC, and Rolling Stone, and everyone's supposed to bow down. Steve Pollock? No, Stephen Paddock. Using my mother's account, but I went to Polytechnic and I was wondering what year did he graduate? Now you know where Jimmy Dore stands on getting the truth out here. Thanks, Jimmy, for fighting the good fight. Paddock was clearly making money some other way, not a professional gambler. Pollock, I thought his name was Paddock. More inconsistencies. Yep, that's what you get with Greg. Glad to see Greg Palast here. Next, Dr. Richard, Worker Co-op's Wolf. Oh, next, Dr. Richard, Worker Co-op's Wolf. Okay, well, it's a revolving cast of characters, man. Incredible interviews. Wow, this is some heavy shit. Jimmy, if you want to understand why, investigate the term structural violence. Thanks for having Greg Palast on. Guys, The Guardian is all part of bullshit paid opposition. They played a major role during World War I, pushing Lithuania. Bullshit. Jimmy Dore, the world is in Burbank, California. When are you coming to London? This is bullshit. Absolutely absurd. He's a fan of Chris Stockman. Greg outing himself as a disinfo agent. Paddock worked for the U.S. government. Go to Ava Danger. Steve Pollock, huh? The young twerks. Grew up in Burbank, right down the road. Yeah, I know of what the gentleman speaks. Greg Palast finally has a reason for the loss. Okay, yeah, right. Paddock was running part of Mercy's old track. What did he call him? Why did he call him Stephen Pollock? Wow, I followed Palast for none dare call it treason. They knew Paddock well. Calls him a genius. But where did Paddock get his millions? Somebody tell me. Playing video poker? No. Wow, Jimmy already sold out in Portland. Why did he call him Steve Pollock? Okay, so a lot of people are questioning the misnaming of the dude. The guy doesn't even know his name. That's a problem. Okay, tell him good news. Your old best friend, Stephen Pollock, is alive and well. The Vegas shooter was a guy named Paddock. See, a lot of people calling him out. Las Vegas is a smoke screen. Around 5, the light of God shines on Palast. Wow, the trolls are hard on this video. Greg, you are right. Sad story. Pollock made a fortune with gambling. I find this dude reliable at all. I don't find this dude... Pollock made a fortune with gambling. I don't find this dude reliable at all. Too short. The Netherlands mainstream media... Come on, Jimmy. This is, in my opinion, your worst video to date. The bullshit about Paddock makes no sense at all. Please do research about the story like we're used to from you. Dig deeper. Right, yeah, Jimmy said, see, now this is where they don't do new. They don't do... this is the shady side of Jimmy Dore and Greg Palast. Name dropping, wearing a hat. There you go. Name dropping, wearing a hat. Greg is all about just names, but not about interviews and facts. Greg is sometimes a very good Here it is. Greg is sometimes a very good investigative reporter, okay? Interesting that he offers nothing on the shooting but the official story, which is full of holes. Then uses his personal knowledge of the accused to support the lone nut theory. Sad to see good men do the globalist dirty work. There you go. That seems to be right on, because Greg does do good work, right? With the purging of the voters and stuff. But that's just his foot in the door to do this kind of crap. Why giving this guy a platform? He's a total fraud. Couldn't agree more. Is a class war not identity? Am I crazy, or did I clearly hear him say he grew up with Steve Pollock, not Paddock? He's a liar. Sun Valley used to be decent all the way until the 90s, so talking about Paddock as less fortunate doesn't make sense. He was long gone by the time that area got crappy. He was 64. Because he didn't do it, Jimmy. Okay, Jimmy, the guy likes the sound of his voice. He sure does. I think the dude was sick of country music. I think this guest, Greg Palast, is playing the audience and telling a story he knows Jimmy would want to hear. Palast is big on anecdotes, facts not so much. Palast has jumped the shark. I got to put this in The Guardian in Britain. We can trust The Guardian. Yeah. We can trust The Guardian. Yeah, right. BBC and The Guardian. I have to say, I'm not buying what this man has to say. Too many inconsistencies just sound like he was caught in a lie to me. There's a weird light on that guy. I wish Lynn would grab me. Video tab on your channel is not working. He didn't say his name correctly at all. Pollock, listen to the lie carefully. God damn. He's telling my story. Those who need to read the New Human Rights Movement I think Jimmy has been duped by this guy. I think Jimmy has been duped by... Yep, this sounds like a bunch of bullshit. Okay, I'm not the only one that thought this dude was shady as F. This guy is incorrect on everything he said about Paddock. From 2 of his own brother's testimony, he could gamble $1 million every single day. Don't get them funds from beat-down apartments. He was on medication for anxiety, not mental unstable. More of fear of germs. Sounds like this guy didn't know him at all. So he grew up with Paddock, but doesn't even know his name. This deluded old man is losing it. Greg Palast Foundation. The word scares me, man. Seems a bit presumptuous that this is the reason Stephen Paddock went and shot a bunch of people. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. We'll never know. Fits the profile of a patsy perfectly. I like your passion, Mr. Palast. Please keep trying to get at the truth. Oh, God. Greg Palast is a Masonic agent. Did I just watch a Rachel Maddow show? Greg Palast is a hill bot. Why is he what is he talking about? Just because you had a mildly shitty childhood that didn't use your full potential doesn't mean 50 years later you'll come up with the most extravagant plan in the world to gun down 60 people have nothing to do with anything. He gives me a little more insight on Paddock's lifestyle, which I appreciate. At least solves a few more pieces of the puzzle. Wow, Greg Palast is something I actually disagree with. If you grew up in poverty and then become a Wall Street banker that forecloses, it doesn't somehow mean you were no longer victimized. It simply means you handled it poorly and are lashing out where it came from because you attempt to get blah, blah, blah. Jimmy. Tisk. Oh, knowing someone not very well in high school doesn't give you insight into them 50 years later. Sorry, Greg. You get the gist, okay? You get the gist of these comments, man. Greg is not believable here. Most of these people are very skeptical of what Greg is saying. Let's see if we can hear him mispronounce his name.
You see what happened, and this is where I come from, and where you see the guys who worked at GM, the guys who worked at Lockheed. And Lockheed closed in '88. GM closed after NAFTA and went to Mexico. And they used to, union guys had jobs, and they lived, they would have their little campers for a vacation. Now they live in their campers along the abandoned railroad tracks on San Fernando Road. This is why I'm there, because she says to me, look, if you don't talk about the people down San Fernando Road, who will? And I wish I'd been able to get that word out earlier, because one of the guys that grew up on San Fernando Road, who I went to school with from 2nd grade till we graduated high school together, was a guy named Steve Pollock. You know him as the Las Vegas shooter.
Ooh, there it was.
It kills me when people say, why? What's Pollock? You know him as the Las Vegas shooter. Graduated high school together. There was a guy named Steve Pollock. You know him as the Las Vegas shooter.
There it is.
And it kills me when people say, why?
There it is. Oops. GP. Oops. That's a big oops. Oops a daisy. GP. That's a big oops. And just more evidence that this guy is not legitimate. There's something wrong with this guy. He doesn't pass the smell test. Too many red flags about this guy. And comments, concerns, suggestions, confessions, compliments, and complaints. You can put them, where you can put them. MZ out.